One big difference was back then you didn't have updates. Like, they weren't hooked to the internet. Once you ship that cartridge or whatever, the CD, once you burn it and you ship it out, that's how it is.
What's up, guys? This is Sperdunky from the future. I'm here to interrupt the podcast for just 1 second before we start. Towards the end of this podcast, during the live stream when we were recording it, there were some parts I had to edit out due to poor audio quality. And so if it feels a little disjointed when you get to that point, I apologize for that. In this episode, we discuss Fred from Natasmai Studios' first commercial release, which is Our Last Days. It's a really interesting looking top-down puzzle adventure game. We'll get into it. In the meantime, if Natasmai Studios project looks interesting to you and you want to support it, he is launching a Kickstarter the exact same day that this episode will be available. So if you're watching this, it's probably still available. Go check it out, link in the description. And a shout out to Fred for being an awesome guest. Now go enjoy the podcast and like and subscribe. It means a lot. Thanks, guys.
You guys ready?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. What's up, guys? Welcome to Sperdunky and Friends. I'm Sperdunky. I'm a level designer and an artist and indie game dev. And what else am I? I'm hosting the show called Sperdunky and Friends, indie game dev show. And this is the show where we talk about indie games, their developers, how they're made, and how you can get started making your own games. I'm Sperdunky. These are my friends. Go ahead and introduce yourself. My co-host, Cybernetic Druid. Hey, I'm Cybernetic Druid. You can call me Mike. I've been doing software engineering for about 10 years, and now I'm working on crypto and games. You can find more about me on northforcegames.com.
Yeah, I'm Fred from Natasmai Studio. This is actually my very first project is Our Last Days, and you can find me at Natasmai pretty much anywhere. It's Natasmai across all social media, so wherever you're looking, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or whatnot.
I'm going to go ahead and show a little sizzle reel of your game. Do you want to go ahead and kind of introduce what the game is about, like a brief synopsis of what you're kind of going for?
Well, first thing I wanted to do was make something that like nobody else is doing, because everybody's doing like third-person shooters and all crap days. I kind of wanted to stay away from that and do something a little different, kind of go old school with it. So the basic story of the game is you take all your supernatural creatures, whether they're zombies, werewolves, vampires, ghouls, ghosts, you name it, they're pretty much in it. And for so many years, everybody's lived in peace. And, well, all of a sudden, Lilith comes into the game. And if anybody who knows who Lilith is, I mean, she's either Adam and Eve's first, or Adam's first wife, or she's the first demon, or she's the first vampire. In this story, she's the first vampire. And she basically just takes an undead army and her vampire generals, I guess you could call them, and just starts wreaking havoc everywhere. And you're basically just trying to find a way to get rid of Lilith and just put everything back to normal. And that's basically it. It's kind of an action adventure game, but it's a mix between, say, like the look and feel of Metal Gear Solid, but then stick in a little bit of old school Zelda with some Monty Python humor. I'm really big into like that old British dry humor. I love it. Absolutely love it. So
awesome. Yeah, I just realized I was watching the demo. This is my gameplay footage of it. And I accidentally left at a part where I got stuck on the wall.
I fixed that today, by the way. I did fix that.
Awesome. Do you want to talk about some of the stuff you are working on? Like, I know this is the non-combat demo, you said.
Right.
So what is the combat demo, or I guess the combat included version of the demo? What would that look like?
Well, basically what it's going to look like is you're going to use things in the environment to try to combat all the different enemies that you're going to fight. So if I'm trying to remember the name of the game. I think it's called Dayz. Yeah, Dayz Gone. If you've ever played that, you know how like if you hit a horde of zombies and you run off, you have to use different things in the environment to be able to kind of get rid of them and hide out and everything else. Take the automatic weapons out of the equation, and that's pretty much what the combat system is going to be. So you're going to use exploding barrels, you're going to use downed trees, toxic pits. Oh, God, I've got a list probably a mile long of different environment stuff that I'm going to use to be able to incorporate that. The main reason I want to do this too is because everybody's played those games where you go into a situation and you're fighting, whatever you're fighting, and there's a bunch of them. Like Diablo's a really good example. That's all you do. It's hack and slash this and hack and slash that, or pull out your gun and you shoot this. I wanted to try to veer away from that a little bit and do something a little bit different. And I think anybody's really doing environment-based combat, at least not in a really large scale like I'm planning on doing with this. At least I can't find anybody.
Yeah, it's more of like every once in a while there's something in the environment that you can use it. It's not like the main focus.
Right. It's not like it's the core mechanic of the game, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about was like design philosophies, and I feel like the way you're explaining this is an interesting design philosophy. So, I mean, you basically already said like the reason why you wanted to do it this way is because you not necessarily that you don't like the way other people do it, but that you want to explore something that's more unique and interesting.
Right.
And I really like the idea of because it actually kind of feels like those classic horror movies, or even like Resident Evil 1, where it's like you kind of have to escape the monster. You can't just shoot the monster. You know what I mean?
Right.
And when it's like, and it's almost like the environment itself is kind of the monster, but it's also the answer to the puzzle of the monster. Does that make sense?
Exactly. And that's basically what I'm going for as well.
Yeah, I think, and that feels, just thinking about it, it feels like, like a Carpenter film almost as a game.
Yeah, I'm a huge Carpenter fan. Yeah.
But yeah, as far as so this is your first game, you said, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I've gone through the whole process before. I've made a game, I've done build, I've put it on itch, and everything else. Now I had to. All my other projects, I had to take them off itch because they were really. I mean, I know you got to make bad games before you make a good one, but most were really, really bad. I couldn't. I can't associate myself with those games. So technically, no, this is not my first game, but yes, it's
Okay, yeah, that's what I want to touch on. Is a lot of people do say like you got to make your bad games before you make your good game, and we're in the process now of kind of making our first game that's getting ready to release or to show off, which we kind of did like a small announcement on my Instagram. But me personally, I've made a bunch of tiny little games that I just didn't do anything with. They're playable but not finished, and so we're pretty much at the same level, I guess.
It's because the main reason you do that anyway is just so you know the process. So, like, if you go and release it on Steam, you're not wasting the money going on Steam and, never actually releasing the game because you have no clue how to do it. If you start on itch or GOG or, you go to a platform like that and you actually release something, now you know what the process is, and it makes it so much easier. You know exactly what steps to take.
Yeah, and a big thing too is like learning the engines. I've been working as a level designer with Coral Wave, so I've been learning Unreal with them. But with our games, I've been dinking around in Unity so much. It's like it's kind of second nature at this point. And like some of the stuff me and you talked about off screen, I kind of noticed things right away because I'm so familiar with Unity. So it's like I kind of had this feeling where it's like I didn't waste the time that I thought I wasted.
Well, none of it's actually wasted. As long as you're learning something on a daily
Exactly.
basis, it's never a waste of time.
Yeah, and I think that that kind of clicked with me the other day, and I think that's a good message to let people know. Like, even though you maybe spent this time working on games, um, and you don't have anything to release, you still have something to show. You still have, value. You're still building skills. And um, speaking of skills, do you want to talk about maybe what brought you into game development and sort of your
Well,
story there?
well, I mean, see. I mean, I guess it really started. I really started getting into it. I'm gonna sound old when I say this, but I really started getting into it when me and my friends used to use the Doom editor and made our own WAD files. So this is way back in like 90, 95, 96 ish, somewhere around there. And I started doing little designs with stuff like that. That's when it really kicked in and started. But over the years, I just kind of dabbled in it. And about 6 years ago, I was working as a private contractor for a cable company. I was up on one of the poles, and long story short, I got electrocuted. So
Ooh.
it was rough. It was real rough. So pretty much from that point on, I was disabled and couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And then I ended up, uh, I mean, I don't watch regular, I don't know about y'all, but I don't watch regular TV anymore. It's either YouTube or it's watching Twitch or, something along those lines of Facebook videos. I don't watch regular TV anymore. I was watching this one guy. Um, you guys have heard of him, Thomas Brush? You guys know who Thomas Brush is?
Oh yeah, we love Thomas Bush.
Okay,
Oh
all
yeah,
right.
I've got his
And
class.
yeah, he's fantastic, and his advice is like excellent. And he came up with this long spiel about going onto Skillshare and learning, whichever aspect of the industry you want to learn, whether it's level design or it's coding or doesn't matter what it is. And he had an offer. The offer that he had the year was like $50. It's dirt. I mean, dirt cheap. So I took it. And for that whole year, I took every single course I possibly could for both Unity and Unreal. And in the long run, I decided to go with Unity because it was just I'm doing low poly anyway. That's my shtick. I love low poly. And if you're going to do either 2D or you're going to do low poly, you're much better going off with Unity. If it's realistic, definitely got to go. There's no competition. You go with Unreal. But and then that's pretty much it. I've been pretty much learning something new every single day. I am, though, will have to say this, though, I am the absolute worst coder. My code is so messy. So messy. I mean, I know I'll get there one day, but for now, I think that's my only weak spot is my code.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not a coder. I may have actually messed up some code. That's fine. Who knows? Because me and Mike are obviously working on a project, and he's the coder. Um,
Yeah, I haven't looked at the new code yet, but I'm sure we can untangle it. But yeah, that's just part of the process. Um, just like with games, you got to write spaghetti code before you can learn how to organize it, and like all of the different skills you put together to make a game.
yeah. And you said in one of your videos that you used to own a video game shop.
Yeah. I did that for about a year.
Oh, okay.
And we did everything from, I mean, we repaired old arcade systems, retro systems, the newer ones. At that time, it was mostly just like Xbox One and PS4s. Sold the retro games, and we had a couple arcade machines in the shop and everything else. But I started having really bad seizures, so I couldn't do it anymore. I kind of sold it off to the rest of my partners. We did really well, though. I mean, we made a profit within the first, I think it was 6 months. We actually turned a profit, which was surprising because from everything I read and all my research, most businesses don't even turn a profit until year 2 or 3, something like that. So it did really, really well.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you feel like you have a pretty good business background coming into game development. I guess game development is pretty different because there's just so many avenues of money making. Like you could create assets for the asset store. You could just make games. You could do consultations for video games. You can be a contractor for video games. You could just make videos about video games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess it's a little different. But do you feel like you have a good business sense going into it?
Oh yeah. I spent 25 years in retail. I mean, I worked for Circuit City before they closed, and then I worked for Sears for a while. And working for those, I learned a whole lot. I learned a whole lot about how to run a business, how to make sure you keep up with your profit margins, how to run a P&L. I mean, then I do that with this stuff too. Just basic stuff, making sure that whatever comes in or whatever goes out, I can try to match coming back in, and it's pretty basic stuff. The only thing that, and I know this is probably one of the things you want to talk about, but the only thing that I'm really kind of not sure about, that I'm really trying to tread lightly with, is how people in the industry see somebody going on to like the asset store, buying assets, putting them into your game, and then integrating pre-made assets into your game. That's the only thing I'm kind of like,
Okay.
not sure how to tread on that quite yet.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good conversation. I think there is a little bit of a stigma around how much assets from the asset store you use versus, just completely making everything from scratch. I personally don't use a lot of assets, but the game that that's gonna be our first published game is built off of Thomas Brush's 2D platformer kit. But I feel like if you make it enough of your own, it's not really going to be an issue. And I know for a fact there are games out there that have done well that use assets from the asset store, and nobody notices because it just fits in with the game. And it's like, especially like looking at your game, it looks like it all goes together. I mean, I couldn't tell like what was a asset. I mean, I think I do recognize one of the characters, and that's why I kind of knew. Because I look at the asset store all the time.
Yeah,
But
well,
yeah, sorry. Yeah, but most people who will play your game, they're not going to know.
Well,
so
yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I know that, but it just, hearing all these horror stories about, especially with me getting ready to go on Kickstarter, hearing all these horror stories about people on Kickstarter doing just straight asset flips. Just taking, like, they buy something on the asset store, they take the scene that comes with the assets they bought, they drop a character in there, drop a character controller on it, and then they just throw it on Kickstarter, and they're making it out to be this the next best thing, or the last one I read was like the last MMO you'll ever play. I don't want to be labeled as that guy.
Yeah. The last MMO you'll ever play because it sucks.
Yeah, I know, right?
No, I feel like, I would say, especially people just starting out who want to learn the engines. it's probably a good thing to start with some assets because they're they're made with um, to a certain quality, so you can understand like okay, like a 3D modeler, if they've never 3D modeled before, they can get a 3D model asset and open it up in Blender and see, you know, for someone who's just looking at it for the first time, they can get a little bit of an understanding.
Yeah, I'm pretty much married to the Sydney assets, the low poly assets. What's really good about those guys is not only is it really easy to import into Blender and change it to whatever you want, they actually have videos on YouTube that show you how you can go in and manipulate all of their models to do whatever you want with it.
Yeah,
It's one of the ways I actually ended up learning how to use Blender.
that's a good point too. A lot of asset creators, if you reach out to them, they're usually pretty responsive. Not to say they all are, but I've watched tons of videos of people who have used assets, and they'll get like direct communication from some of these people, and they do tend to have tutorials and stuff to show you how to implement or change things in their assets as well.
Well, that's one thing that I was really surprised up to when I started contacting a lot of indie devs and getting a hold of other people in the industry. This has got to be some of the nicest people I've ever dealt with in my entire life. Like, there's no the trolls and the naysayers are down to a very, very, very low percentage. I mean, it has to be about 90% of the people that I've talked to are just really nice, really willing to help and point you in the right direction. They don't bash you over the head with like, oh, why don't you know this? Or, none of that other crap like that. Just really, it's a fantastic community. It really is.
Yeah.
I'm still this.
If you dig deep enough, you will find those people. But
yeah, I'm sure.
but I'll say I was really surprised. I just recently got back into Twitter, and for obvious reasons, I stayed away from Twitter for a long time because I just thought it was dead and crappy. But I was really surprised the indie game community on Twitter is amazing. And because I follow indie game channels, all I'm seeing is like all these new games all the times and all the time, and it's just like it's like this whole new world of like, oh my god. And if you comment on people's stuff or like put your stuff out there, people are pretty uh, they're pretty fair. They'll be like, hey, this looks awesome, or hey, maybe work on this or something. I don't know.
Yeah, not like the guys on Reddit. I had to stop using Reddit because that was
See, I've never had a Reddit account.
Oh yeah, don't use it. God, don't use it. It's so bad. It's so bad. I think that's where the trolls live, to be honest with you. And that's another thing that really surprised me too was like I consider myself the guy on the bottom of the totem pole. I don't want to say nobody because that sounds pretty negative, but I'm like the guy all the way in the bottom. And I may have been doing this for a few years, but I'm still kind of just starting out. And the people that will go out of their way to say, "Well, you suck," and why are you doing this? You shouldn't be doing this shit. Your game's horrible. Well, it's like they really have nothing better to do, and that's one of the main reasons I stopped using it. I stopped using anything that has any kind of negative comments or, I mean, if you've got feedback to give to me, and it's you don't have to be 100% positive, but be productive. And if you're not gonna be, I've got so much stuff going on in my life right now.
Yeah, and
And that's why since I've dumped Reddit and haven't used them, I mean, I've really met some fantastic people. Really, really awesome
Yeah,
and no matter what you do, you're always going to have haters. So at some point, you just gotta go for your vision, and no matter what you do, you're always going to have some level of haters.
Yeah. Speaking of haters, I did want to go back to a little bit on the design philosophy. For your game specifically, you talked about accessibility and the fact that one button kind of helps you get through the level. Do you want to touch on that and maybe how you came up with that? Because I know other games have done versions of that for sure.
Well, when I made the very first prototype, I took it over to a friend of mine's house, and I sat them down and I was like, "Just, I'm not going to tell you anything. Just play through it." And they kept asking me over and over again, "How do I do this? What do I do here?" Well, just basic questions about the game. So when I came back and I make notes about everything, and I went over my notes, the one thing that struck me the most was that, and these aren't gamers, these aren't people that are normally gamers. It was that I needed to try my hardest to make a game that was accessible to everybody. Like you could sit down with a keyboard, WASD, and your space bar, and if you just use just that, you could blow through the entire game with no problem. Because that's another thing too. Like some of these games are these new AAA, obviously, but some of these AAA games that are coming out right now, they pack way too much stuff into their games, way too much. And I didn't want to follow that same path. And I mean, I know they're going towards, there's executives on the top there, like, do what that guy's doing because that's making a bunch of money, or do what that guy's doing because that guy's making a bunch of money. I didn't want to be like, I don't want, I keep going back to saying that. I know a lot, but I don't want to go back to being whatever the norm is. I want to try to go outside of the box and then a little bit farther outside of that box. And the only other issue that I've run into too was my localization. That's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I thought that was going to be one of the easier parts, but because I want my audience to be broad, and since I am going to have to try to get my audience to be as broad as possible, that's why I stuck with the one button commands. Everything to interact with everything in the world is going to be spacebar. The only other condition is scrolling through the radio stations, and that's basically just using the tab key. But you don't even have to do that to complete the entire game. Just that one spacebar. Make it as easy as possible.
Okay. So you brought up the radio stations. Do you kind of want to talk about this idea you have for like some of the entertainment in the world of the game you're making is kind of like maybe it's a little bit of world building, but it also provides clues. Is it also kind of just to like build like a certain type of atmosphere or something in your game?
Well, yeah, pretty much. I honestly can't remember where I came up with the idea of the televisions, though. I was just building one of the worlds one day, and I sat, I took an asset, and I sat at TV, and if I could put a video on there. I put a video on there. It looked kind of cool, and I'm like, ooh, wait a minute. What if I attach a camera to it? Texture on there, attach the camera to it. I'm like, ooh, wait a minute. I can use this for clues. And that's basically where it came from. I know that, who was it? Trying to think of the name of the development studio. I'm horrible with names, by the way, just
Okay.
but there's a game that's getting ready to come out sometime this month. It's a first-person horror one where it uses, if you walk into a room and you see a TV, that's how you can track the monster that's following you. Is if the TV flashes and it shows you with the monster behind you, that's how you know to turn around and take off or run.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's scary.
and with all the stuff that I didn't when I finished the courses and started building stuff in Unity, I didn't realize a lot of the stuff that you could do with it. Like I didn't know that you can embed video. I didn't know you can embed a URL. I didn't know. I mean, there's so much cool stuff that you can implement into the game that can just take it from, to the next level. And sometimes I got to catch myself because I'm like, well, what, am I putting too many mechanics in this? Building too much? Is this going to be too much for the person to keep up with? So, like, every now and then I'll put in a couple of mechanics and then I'll take one out. And I'll put in a couple more. So there's like, I have a list full of different mechanics that I've, at least a good dozen that I have taken out because it's just way too much. Did
Yeah.
you guys catch yourselves doing that too?
Yeah, that's one of Mike's favorite topics is the minimum viable product. I have all these
Yeah.
dreams, and then he just wants to crush them slowly,
I got dreams too, but they're just it's not. My dreams are not happening this year. I can tell you that.
You
Yeah.
can always save it for the next project. So.
Oh yeah, that's kind of one idea we've talked about. Is we have this idea for a big game, but it has all these little features in it. So each little feature could be a game along the way. Sorry, my brain just turned off.
Yeah, that's all right.
Well, one thing I did want to touch on is all three of us are dads.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've got a 13-year-old. That makes me feel old.
And yeah, so like, does your kid like is he interested in your games, or like does he think it's cool, or is he just like whatever?
Let's put it this way: my son has self-taught himself to use Blender, uses Sketchfab. He makes mods for um, ROM mods for Super Mario 64. He's constantly doing it. I mean, so he's knee deep in this stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. He's a pretty good 3D modeler for his age. Really is. I'm
That's awesome.
surprised every day when he shows me stuff.
Yeah, I always wish that I had started sooner. And I would say if anyone is even remotely interested in game development, you should at least try it as young as possible. Because
Well, I mean,
I started when I was like 21. And
that's
I'm 28 now.
That's
Yeah.
not too bad. But you're never too old to start. You're never too old for it. So.
No, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, let me ask you guys a question. What do you guys think about using other people's scripts or using visual scripting? Because I seem to think that it's a little bit easier, at least for me anyway, to use visual scripting.
I'd say whatever works for you in your game. Really, the only downside with visual scripting is it can be like a performance, but if your game can handle it, there's no reason to go out of your way um, just to use code. And even if like I write code, that's my thing. So even when I'm writing code, you don't want to optimize prematurely. You don't want to spend too much time just eking out every little millisecond on the first pass. Um, and you come back to that if it's necessary. Now, there's certain parts where it's going to help if you have too many things going on at once, in the game, or a lot of files that you're loading at once, or there's certain bottlenecks. But I'd say if you're more functional with visual scripting, just use that. Um, but if you're interested in coding, obviously, you know, anyone can learn it. But I'd say just depending on what your game needs. And
Well,
then
when do you guys? Oh, go ahead.
as far as using other people's scripts, I mean, I don't like to copy and paste things I don't understand. Um, but and I'll always edit it to make it make sense to me. Um, but yeah, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. If someone has there's tons of libraries and things. There's no reason to have everything made from scratch from the lowest level possible. You're just redoing work someone else has already done.
So when do you think you actually should go back and polish up, say, any aspect of your development process, like whether it be your code or your design, or I mean, should you polish as you go, or should you just build and then go back and polish? I mean,
I think
I
it
try to do it as
depends.
I go, but I seem to get wrapped up in all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I think polishing as you go can have an issue of like you're never done, right? It's like, okay, you polish this part, and then we're going to add this
Yeah.
thing and whatever. But at some point, you want to release it, right? So um, I've always had that tendency to polish as I go and like rework every little detail over and over and over. But lately, in the last year or so, I've really been trying to stay on that minimum viable product, like Hayden was talking about, as far as what actually needs to be done to ship this thing, right? And you've got a workable alpha out on Twitch that we can share the link for. So you're well on your way to a minimum viable product, I think.
Yeah, and from our art side, I'll say I kind of have the problem of when I'm making stuff, like, oh, this needs to look amazing, and I kind of skip the block out phase sometimes. And I would say it's probably better to get everything running and working, and then once you're kind of at the point where everything works, to go back and polish and make things look better or things run better. But I guess it kind of depends, because I have the problem a lot where I'm just making things as I go, trying to make them look amazing.
Yeah, but that never stops, though.
Yeah, never stop.
Yeah, never. Even when you think you're done, you're really not done.
Well, I'll keep it rolling. You're talking about accessibility, adding the different languages being more work than you thought. That's probably something that um, for the first version, you probably don't need in a minimal viable product, but it's obviously a good thing to add as far as having a wider audience.
What do you think about using AI to actually do? Because a couple people have actually said to me to use AI to do my localization because it streamlines the process. But from what I've read, it doesn't look like it's very reliable, at least
Yeah.
not now, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it'll give you something. I've been playing with AI for a while. It'll give you something that maybe it's workable, but especially if you're trying to translate to another language or something, and you don't know the language, you don't know what you're saying. You could be saying really terrible things, and
Yeah,
you're
I
just
know,
trying
right?
to explain an adventure, and you know, so I yeah, and there's also, you're talking about a stigma of using like pre-canned, pre-made assets and things. Um, that's kind of happening with AI too, as far as people are trying to generate articles and then like post them as if they wrote them, and then but then there's AI detectors, and so there's this kind of arms race has already started with you know AI generated content versus detecting whether it's AI content. And so I'm trying to embrace it because I think it's going to take a lot of jobs, and it's going to take I think it's going to empower individuals to do a lot more, at least things that they're not familiar with. Kind of gets everyone up to like an intermediate level. But the danger is that it's really easy to get to that intermediate level, but you don't know where you're blatantly wrong to an expert if you're just generating stuff with AI. And so I look at it like I take responsibility. If I'm going to take something out of AI and I'm going to share it, I'm going to take the responsibility for myself for that content rather than just vomit AI stuff all over the internet. Um, but
Well,
unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people. That's the way to make money right now, is just vomit AI stuff. But here pretty soon, we're going to be able to see, oh, this was just AI. It was, last year's AI or even last month's AI. versus the current stuff.
Well, and there's always got to be creative minds behind it. I mean, I don't ever see a space where, something's going to be created by AI and there's not some kind of artist or some kind of creator behind that AI directing the AI to do it,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah,
still isn't, I don't know. I guess I like doing things the old-fashioned way, honestly. But I mean, I've kind of, I've kind of messed around with Chat GPT, asking her really, really, messed up questions, but
mm-hmm.
that's about as far as I've gotten with it so far.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a fun toy, kind of like when Siri first came out. You stick your phone and just ask her really dumb questions. That's pretty much what I'm doing with ChatGPT right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And when the internet first came out, it was a toy, it was a fad, it was a, but it stuck around. And then when smartphones came out, it was, it's a neat gadget, or like when crypto first came out.
Yeah.
Now it's got a bad rep. I think it's more about the market. It's just down right now, but it's not going anywhere. AI's not going anywhere either.
Well,
So
and I don't
it's
think,
kind of
honestly, I don't think we're going anywhere either. I think
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think this is one of the industries, like the entertainment industry as a whole, movies, music, game dev. Uh, I don't think it's gonna go anywhere.
What's up, guys? I'm back, by the way. Yeah, I just want to say, I think, AI, just it's a tool, and to me, it kind of feels like the natural evolution of like a search engine, specifically like ChatGPT. But here's a question for you. As someone who went from working full time and owning your own business, and that now you're at home working on your game, what are some of like the biggest challenges that you feel like you have to overcome as a game developer in general, and then also life circumstance, I guess?
Not keeping on schedule. I have, I have a scheduler book. I have, how Thomas Brush says that you need a like a game Bible. When I heard him say that, I actually went out and I got one of those kind of planners where every single solitary thing that is in my game is in this book. And that's the hardest thing, is trying to make sure that I divide my time as equally as possible between doing this, spending time with my family, and also taking care of myself. But just like yesterday, I was working on the project for 12 hours and did not even realize that I was working on the project for 12 hours. It didn't feel like I went like that. But yeah, trying to stay on schedule and trying to keep the promises that I make. Like if I say I'm going to release a demo, or if I'm going to say that I'm going to release certain screenshots, or trying to keep up with those aspects of my schedule. That's got to be one of the hardest things to do. Everything else is I mean, I can take 2 or 3 days because I've got an engineer mindset anyway. So I can take any of these tools, even when a new tool comes out. I can take a couple days and either watch a couple of YouTube videos on it or just figure it out on my own. So learning new tools or learning a new way of doing things, that's simple to me. But keeping on track, keeping on schedule. That's why I constantly have my wife, like, she'll always ask me, did you work on the project today? Did you do this today? Did you make sure you did this today? She's kind of my accountability buddy. She makes sure that I get, if I say I'm going to do something, that I'm going to do
it. That's a really good point. That's something I struggle with too. Is like I'll come up with an outline, and then I'll feel like, well, you know what? Today I've kind of worked on my game quite a bit. I'll hang out with the babies, and because I mean I have a 2-month-old and a 2-year-old, and then like I'll catch myself sometimes. Or like my wife will say something. She's like, you've been working on this for however long. Like, don't you like want to like do something else? And I'm like, well, no, I don't. But you're right. Like, you're right. Oh, I got my toddler throwing magnets on the ground. And but then I also have the opposite problem where I feel like I don't. I mean, I work a full-time job that's not game development related. So I do kind of feel sometimes like damn, I haven't gotten to work as much on my projects as I would like to. And I think the taking care of yourself is a good thing to add as well, because when you put a lot of things on your plate, you do kind of tend to forget about yourself sometimes. And I'm kind of actually interested. Mike, he's got animals, and then he also has been doing tech jobs.
So for me, I've got chickens and goats and rabbits, and we've got 2 turkeys now, 2 poults.
Oh wow!
And dogs and cat and kids, and when you put a full-time job in there, and then other projects on top of it. I try to keep the animals to where I check on them like twice a day, and it's usually like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, up to 20 minutes once a day, or 10 minutes twice a day. So I don't have like a full blown, and the kids pitch in, and it's good for them to have animals around. And then obviously the day job comes first. And then for the side projects, I've got this whole like notebook just full of all kinds of different stuff, pieces and parts and whatever. And when I think of something that, I write it down and go, okay, well, and look at it later. Okay, is this going to be a game? Is it going to be, what's it going to be? But I definitely have a problem with too many things going at once, too many projects, 60% done, 70% done.
Yeah.
Then I get bored and go, okay, well, I'm going to work on this, or I had this new idea I want to play with. And so, like I said, in the last year, I've really been trying to focus on, the top, like, couple of projects instead of like 12 different projects. So,
yeah, and that was another thing that I make sure to do. Like, I make sure that while I'm working on the project, I actually enjoy the part where I sit back and I play test, because I love playing my game. So I look at it this way: even if I finish the project and not a single person interacts with it whatsoever, I made it for me, because I have a blast playing.
yeah.
Other than the falling through the floor, which still got to apologize for that. I didn't realize you could do that. I actually, before I fixed it, I went back and I'm like, are you serious? Oh yeah, I could sneak past this. And I'm like, wow, my first glitch. That's awesome.
There's always going to be bugs. I found one too, but I can send it to you later.
Oh yeah, he played the demo as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I did find there's one part in the mansion where when you're coming through the levels, you can walk up on the walls. Like, how the top-down view, you have like the walls as like lines basically, or like, you know what I mean.
Well, basically, what I ended up doing was, and I didn't realize it before, I put the triggers like almost butted right up against each other. So when you went from one level to the next, and it hit one and then activated the next one, yeah, it's it's like a millisecond that happens. But they were so close together that if you didn't just keep running through it, that would happen. So it kind of just spread them apart a little bit and then fix it.
I think going back to what you're saying about just enjoying making the games, I feel like that's kind of important too. Is you find yourself kind of like getting stuck on things, but to me, that's kind of a part of the fun of game development, and I kind of like that I'm not just doing like what I would consider my specialties, like art and like storytelling and immersion, that kind of stuff, and like the overall design. I'm kind of glad that I didn't just start like at a job somewhere just doing that part and actually having to like learn some code. And not that I'm a coder, but I've had to, from necessity, like learn some code, learn about the engines, because I come from an indie game dev point of view now. It's kind of helped me appreciate the process, and I feel like that's kind of an important piece to it. And probably the main thing that makes indie game developers different from like someone who works at like a AAA studio who just has one job basically.
Well, and I think of it this way too. I honestly think that the indie development community is going to completely derail AAA within the next, I give it 5, maybe 6 years tops. And the AAA landscape is going to be just decimated. And it's only because of the way they monetize everything. I mean, their FIFA is a really, really good example. I mean, that game alone, off their monetization, they don't call them loot boxes. They call them something else. It's those little cards that you buy. They made 1.5 billion just off of selling those. That's not the game sales or anything else. That's just selling those little
Yeah.
I mean,
And FIFA sells their game at full price too, don't they? Like
yeah,
$60.
yeah, they still sell it. It's $60, $70. Well, depending on the system that you're buying it on, but yeah, and eventually, people are going to just be tired of that, and that's another challenge too. Is try to find the right way to monetize without offending the player. I could care less about offending like big tech or offending big business or anybody. I don't care. I care about offending the player, and if it's intrusive to the player, I don't want to do it. And like season passes, battle passes, loot boxes, all that other crap, it takes you away from it. Really takes you away from the game. It really does. And practice.
For the project I do level design for, it's basically going to be an online shooter, and that's something we kind of go back and forth with it like every single day, because like we're all Halo fans, and like if you look at what Halo's doing right now, there's like no content, but the things that they're selling are like $20, $10, and it's just for like a color to put on your character, or like or like lore breaking armor and stuff like that. And
or
it's
when
like
they make promises that they don't keep. Like, how many years have they said that they're going to bring split screen back?
Yeah, that was like in their announcement for the game, like 6 years ago.
Yeah,
and it's like Halo 1 in 2001 had 4-player split screen, and you could system link your Xboxes and play with like 16 people or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like,
that's a question I got for you guys. Since doing this, I cannot play games the way I used to. Like, my 2 favorite ones to play right now is Destiny 2 and World of Warcraft. And when I play them, if I've worked on the project all day long and I go to play either of those games, all I see is colliders and where the trigger might sit for this particular event. And do you guys go through the same thing? I mean, do you guys see the same thing when you're playing other people's stuff too?
yeah. For me, I find I appreciate things differently that maybe I wouldn't have cared about before. And then I feel like I notice more things as well. I'm a huge Halo fan, and I've watched like all the Halo behind the scenes and stuff. And one thing they talk about that I can't unsee is like the way they spawn enemies in the campaign is like they'll add like a hill or something so you can't see past. So then when you come over the hill and it spawns right before you get there, it looks like they were there all along, like all these enemies.
Yep.
But it's basically like a optimization trick as well, because then you don't have enemies just sitting all over the map. And they'll do that, like they'll have like little pockets like everywhere. And when I've gone back and played, it's like I notice it like every time now.
You can see the spawn points, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely ruined Minecraft for myself, just messing around with mod packs because I'll try to play and I'll go, oh, I want to have this item. I want to add this mod. Oh, I want to tweak this. I don't like how this is. I'm going to change this. And so I just end up spending more time tinkering with the mod pack. Um, but that's fun too, I guess. But yeah, I've definitely kind of ruined certain games, messing with tweaking things and mods and things. And then as far as other games, I'm always hunting for mechanics. Like, how are they using this? How can we? Is there some design space so we could take this mechanic and explore it a little further? What if we took the mechanic from this game and combined it with a mechanic from that game? You know, and so that's how it's changed my game playing.
Yeah, I'll put on top of that. It's kind of hard for me to enjoy games now because my my free time's limited, and I'll find myself starting to play a game, and I'll just be like, I shouldn't be playing this right now. I should be working on my game, and it's kind of hard to enjoy games sometimes.
Yeah.
Or it's like I can only justify playing games now if I'm playing with like a friend or like one of my brothers or something, because then at least I'm spending time in a way with someone.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Um, and Minecraft is kind of a funny example because I feel like they're a good example of a AAA studio that kind of keeps their game alive, like by adding more and more stuff. But then they also give like player friendly experiences. Like the modding community is huge, and they actually have on the, I forget what they call it. Is it Bedrock? They have uh, like they have people who make money with mods through the Bedrock.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a interesting experience that you kind of ruining Minecraft for yourself. You said, but it's also the most accessible AAA game out there. And I would actually say Minecraft is probably the best game ever made. It's not necessarily my favorite game, but in a way it kind of is. And it did start as an indie game.
Well, yeah. I mean, that was one guy. It was one guy that just decided to take a chance, and that's why
Yeah.
that's why I don't think I'll ever stop. Because what if? I mean, it may not necessarily be this project, but maybe it's the next one or the one after that, or you never know when you're going to get that one project. It's going to change everything.
Hmm.
So
I also love your name, Our Last Days. It kind of reminds me of like Dayz or Days Gone, but it also reminds me of The Last of Us, all in one title.
well, see, the Dayz thing. That's actually where I got it from. Was Dayz, because
Hmm.
I had it just last days, and I had it spelt normally,
Hmm.
and there was some. It wasn't necessarily a game project. It was something else because I was getting ready to do the trademark for it, and there was something else actually called Last Days like that. So I was just looking through Steam one day and saw DayZ like that. I'm like, wait a minute, I change the Z and just change the name and then put Our Last Days, and it worked. Um, that's another thing too that I try not to do. Like, how many times have you restarted your project? Like, gone all the way back to the very beginning and started fresh, and then just not using the old project, not using any of its settings or anything else, just gone back to the drawing board to the very beginning. How many times have you done
For me, all the time.
Yeah.
that?
Lately, we've been better. We've got a couple projects that are sticking around for a while, but
See, and then that's one reason I like Unreal a little bit better in that aspect than Unity, because I can make one small change in Unity and it'll make it to where I can't even make a build. And then trying to go through the log in Unity is just, it's crazy. I don't, maybe it's just me, but I don't know. It's crazy. Trying to,
Yeah.
I mean, it it doesn't seem as stable as Unreal. But like I said before, I mean, the only reason I would ever use Unreal is if I was going to make a realistic game. Like if I was going to make a first-person horror game or something like that, there would be no question about it, I would use Unreal.
Yeah, it's hard. It's also hard to figure out like what version of Unity you want to use, and it's like there's so many versions, and it's like, well, yeah, I want the new features, but also, I've had this problem where I've started a project in the most recent version, and then months will go by, and I try to use like a certain asset, or I try to like play with something after a while of not being in the project, and it's just like it's all broken. It doesn't work.
Or they'll change something in the pipeline settings.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's one thing I hope they fix soon, is just take all 3 render pipelines and just make one. Make just one.
I think they did do that, or they are doing that.
They are doing it. Oh, good.
Yeah, when HDRP came out, the high definition render pipeline, I made something. It's on our studio's channel. It's the only video on there. The North Forest scenes. I made that using HDRP, and like a lot of the features I'm used to using don't work with HDRP. But because I already built it, I was like, well, I'm just gonna put it out. It's just supposed to be like this ambient scene thing. So I'm just gonna put that out and just let it be. But we still plan to make more of those ambient scenes from like our different game ideas. It's just I'm not going to use HDRP. It was supposed to be like the best looking one when it first came out, but it kind of sucks.
Well, yeah, you are. If you're looking for the most features out of the different pipelines, it's URP.
Yeah. Well, I know that now. But for those people who are listening, just I would stay away from HDRP for now.
Yeah.
What were we just talking about before that?
I kind of lost track. I don't know.
All right. Do you want to talk about your marketing?
It's right now. It's actually pretty non-existent, and the main reason for that is I got. I don't read books very well, so I listen to a lot of audiobooks on Audible, and I read this one. It's from. It's called 10 Steps to Making Your First Game Successful. It's by the guy who did. You guys ever heard of the game Dark? DARQ. You guys ever heard of that?
Yeah, I think so. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the guy that developed that actually wrote a book. And one of his suggestions is to do the project as much as humanly possible, get it, as polished as you can for make the demo at least, like you say, like 15 or 20 minutes long. It's pretty much the same thing Thomas Brush says. And then once you get that done and it's something that you can bring out to the masses, that's when you start your marketing. Right now, it's basically just getting ready for Steam, figuring out how I'm going to distribute the Steam keys, trying to get as many people on Facebook to notice it, trying to get people ready for the wish lists. I've got some email captures, and that's pretty much it. Just trying to keep up with social media on a daily basis. I found is the easiest way to market whatever project you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the Facebook groups, I'm in a bunch of them. That's actually how I found you. And then also, speaking of Thomas Brush, one of his guests on his little like podcast he was doing for a little bit, I see him on the Facebook group all the time, and I actually saw his project before he was on Thomas Brush through the Facebook group, or one of them. I honestly don't. I'm following like 6 different indie game groups on Facebook, so I don't know which one.
But yeah, those groups help out a lot as far as the marketing is concerned. And as long as you engage, I mean, as long as you're engaging with the communities and the groups that you're in, It's fairly easy. But you got to make sure that you stay engaged because I got sick like dog sick for a week. I was laid in bed. I couldn't get out of bed, and I didn't engage with the community for a whole week, and I had to pretty much start from the beginning. So anybody that's watching this, stay engaged. Even if you just say hello once a day, just, hey guys, what's up? It's anything.
Yeah. It's like that's the thing too about social media is like they seem to change their rules quite a bit. And right now all the different social medias have like their own rules. So it's like how much do you have to stay on top of like each platform's new rules and I feel like what I try to do is just stick with genuine interactions. So like on Twitter, I've just been like sharing projects that I think look cool and commenting on them. And like, if someone asks for like tips or like help and I genuinely know the answer or I feel like I have a good perspective, I'll comment. And Instagram I feel like is probably my favorite platform, but it just feels like I don't get any reach. You know what I mean?
Well, I think the companies are actually making it harder and harder to get organic reach.
Yeah.
It's especially YouTube. YouTube's crazy. I went and seen what it takes to be monetized on YouTube now. And, I'm not even worried about being monetized on YouTube now. It's not even a thought in my head anymore because what they want you to, the goals they want you to accomplish, at least in my eyes anyway. It's just, there's no way I'm going to get 10 million views on my shorts to be able to get monetized. It ain't happening. I'm optimistic, but that's wow.
Yeah, it's
100.
I think it's really like if you get some sort of consistent views, even if it's small, then it's basically you just have to keep doing it. But it's just the smaller the watch time or like views or reach you're getting, the more often you have to do it, basically. And that's something I've kind of been keeping an eye out before starting this stream, is trying to learn how to optimize your YouTube, because I feel like I want to do game development stuff, but it's like how do you also do that in a way where you can market and support your studio? So it's like you kind of have to provide some kind of value, whether it's like showing how you did something or uh, giving some sort of insight in a way where it's like someone wants to click on the video and learn about it.
It's hard to keep up, and when you're on a small team and you have to wear that many hats, it's just so hard to keep up with. Before it was like on all of these social media platforms, they were just about putting it, just put out content, just constantly. And now it's not even. It doesn't even look like it's about that anymore. It's about, like with Facebook, it's about paying for ads. You pay for ads, oh, you'll get views, you'll get eyes.
Oh yeah,
but you pay for those ads, and they're not really that expensive. But for somebody that's working on a budget of $0.00, it's pretty out there.
Yeah, that's a fair point. In a way, it's fair. You're paying for marketing, but
Right.
I do think there's probably a way to combine the social medias in a way where you could. People do it. They basically create free marketing for themselves. It's just it's a grind, and it's also, like I said, trying to figure out the different rules of each platform, pretty much. Where it's like Twitter, who invented the hashtag. Right now, it seems like, at least from what I've seen, is they don't like hashtags now for the algorithm.
Yeah.
They basically, search based off of what's actually in your tweets. And I think a big part of that is there was just a certain amount of time where people were just spamming all these hashtags that didn't make sense.
Well, that's like, even if you take social media out of the equation, like on itch.io. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great platform to be able to put your content on, but I mean, if you look at their fine print, if you look at, how you actually get on front page, even if the game's free, those people are paying to be on that front page. And I don't know, I just wish there was a platform like I was thinking about trying GOG because somebody told me that GOG is a really good platform to put projects on. What was the other one? I was thinking of going on to Epic Store, but it seems like their terms are pretty much the exact same as Steam is, and they're not. They're at the point now where they're really picky on what projects they take in. So
Yeah, I hadn't looked at GOG, but I do like itch.io's fee structure. They do charge less than Steam.
yeah,
But I'll have to look into. I'll make a note of GOG.
Yeah, we'll have to bring you back on when you're looking to release your game. I really appreciate you coming on. I'm not trying to wrap up, but there is a chance I might have to wrap up. So I want to get this out of the way. I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm looking forward to the release of your game, and hopefully we'll stay in contact, and you can kind of build up your YouTube, and that's what we're trying to do as well. Our studio is North Force Games, and Sperdunky Media is kind of my way of trying to like build a network and find a way to basically build a small marketing team almost. And while I'm learning about game development,
Do you want to share? Do you want to share with us where people can find more about you and your game and your studio?
it's at Natasmai Studio on every platform. So on YouTube, it's at Natasmai Studio. On Facebook, it's at Natasmai Studio. Same for Twitter. And let's see, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, uh, Discord, Patreon is the same way. It's but Patreon's not done yet. Still kind of setting it up a little bit. But that's also at Natasmai Studio. And that's basically it. That's the best way to find it. And the best way to get a hold of the latest demo too is going on itch. Is on itch.io. And I know they've been having problems with their website here lately. Somebody had told me if you download the desktop app for itch, that it's easier because it gives you an actual install button, whether you've uploaded a zip file or however, it doesn't matter how you uploaded it. It's basically got Butler built into it.
Well, that's
And
good
then
to
all
know.
you have to do is just click an install button.
Well, I installed it. I installed it this morning and played through part of it. And it was a zip file. You just unzip it and click the exe. It was pretty easy.
Yeah, I try to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, and it was pretty smooth as far as going between scenes and everything. I think I went where I wasn't supposed to. I went into the water and went left, and it let me up on the mountain. And so
Yeah.
I skipped a whole part of the game. But when I got to the mansion, you've got a trigger there that picks up the story. And so it was, I just had to walk over by the zip line at the base of it. And
Well,
it
I've actually
picked it
reworked.
up.
Yeah, I've reworked all of that and the just to make it more streamlined. I kind of changed that so you can't do that anymore because I actually was able
Oh,
to do that
okay.
as well. So yeah.
So one thing I want you mentioned something about in one of your YouTube videos about bringing back old school gaming. What does old school mean to you, and what part of old school do you want to bring back?
Just making it fun again because
Mm-hmm.
there are very few games that are actually out there right now, to me anyway, that are actually fun.
Mm-hmm.
That like back in the days of like Super Metroid and Final Fantasy VII, or I'm sorry, yeah, Super Metroid, Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy 2 and 3, Resident Evil, Dino Crisis, Parasite Eve. I mean, all those games were all fun, and it seemed like the industry has kind of gotten away from the fun and is worried more about how much of a quick buck they can make before the IP tanks.
Yeah.
So, and that's basically all it is just being able to sit down at your couch with a couple of buddies, and I'd love to do a project to where I can have, it be an action game and have split screen, four-player split screen, like in the old GoldenEye. That was, I mean,
Oh yeah.
some of the best times in my life was sitting down and playing that with my friends. So just
Yeah, and GoldenEye specifically, and did you play Perfect Dark, the one after that?
yeah, I
By
still
the
like GoldenEye
same.
better though.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I get I like the flavor of GoldenEye better, but I like the options for the multiplayer in Perfect Dark. They had all kinds of different AIs you could set, like all kinds of weird stuff. Like the one AI would just go after whoever's in first place, one would go after whoever's in last place.
Yep.
And you could like go through this whole thing of all these options and set up this crazy game. And I think they even had a gun that shoots like through walls and stuff. And so that's one thing that blows my mind about a lot of the modern games is that it's obviously possible to do with the newer games, but they just don't do it. Like the split screen. Um, if they did it way back then on Nintendo 64, it just blows my mind that a lot of that stuff has just been dropped.
Well, not only that, to me, they seem like they've gotten really lazy too. Like when Cyberpunk came out, that was I could just look at the Let's Plays that I watched on YouTube and
Mm-hmm.
know that right out of the gate, that was two things. Number one, it was the guys in the suits telling people, hurry, 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 come on,
Mm-hmm.
let's get this done. I don't care what it looks like. We can always patch it later. And then the second part of it is that, those employees are worked so hard, they're working 15, 16, 18 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want to do anything either. I'd fall asleep at my desk and be lazy as hell too. I wouldn't want to do any of that. And it's just, you would have never back in the day seen a game released like that. If the publisher got their hands on it and seen the game in a state like that, they would send it back to you and, you know, take another
Mm-hmm.
3 months and fix it.
Yeah. Well, and I
And I'd
think.
rather. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. You rather what?
I'd rather wait the 3 months
Mm-hmm.
for the game to be correct than have it come out looking like that. That's just
Yeah,
crazy.
I think one big difference was back then you didn't have updates. Like once you ship that cartridge or whatever the CD, once you burn it and you ship it out, you rarely have a chance to fix anything. Because they're just they weren't hooked to the internet.
Yep.
It was like
That's how
whatever's
it
in the
goes, too.
game. That's how it is. So you have to check. You really have to test it, and um, and I think that was uh, part of why they made cheat codes, because you had developers trying to test their game and they don't have time to get good at their own game, but it has to be difficult enough to last, to give you like so many hours of gameplay. So yeah, I mean, at least they could patch it, but it's kind of, it had, being able to patch the game whenever you want, I think has kind of spoiled game devs in a way, as far as relying on that, shipping a game that's obviously not ready a lot of time. Especially the ports, like some of the ports are, really buggy. But
Yeah, but if you're gonna if you're gonna do a project like a lot of those are in that kind of a scale, it doesn't to me. I mean, I know there might be other circumstances, but to an outsider looking in, it looks like it's lazy.
Oh
That's
yeah,
what it looks like
yeah,
to me. It looks like it's flat out lazy.
yeah. I can see that. Also, there's also, when you've got that much money on a project, you have to ship on time. And I've watched a lot of retros about different indie projects and conventions and things, and it seems like a lot of times you just have to rip out big chunks of your game just to be able to release it. Sometimes it's design, or sometimes it's just you plan too much to put in the game, and you just have to rip it out because you got to come out this year, or this quarter or whatever. And so I don't know. I think that's just part of development in general, especially once you get big companies and management, and people have egos, and people have power politics and things in the office. Lots of money on the line,
That's one thing I promised myself I would never ever get like. Never want. I like doing this way too much to have spoil it. To me, that would spoil it.
I'm back, by the way, guys. I just wanted to jump in a little bit on why we don't have split screen anymore, and how much fun it was to play against bots in like 007 and Perfect Dark. Halo Infinite has bots, but nobody cares because it's not fun to play against the bots. And I think big companies kind of just compartmentalize the fun of the game, so they care more about how they're going to make their money. Which, I mean, it's a business, so they got to make money. But if you focused on just making the game fun and selling it, you're going to make more money.
Well, that's like Elden Ring is a really good example of that. Elden Ring did really, really good, and that game was fantastic. And they took the 5 years that it took to develop that game and made sure it was correct before they released it.
Yeah,
So,
they definitely had. Yeah, they definitely had raving reviews, especially when they added content and didn't charge. I saw people online; their minds were blown. They could not believe that. Wait, this is free content, and I don't have to pay for it. It's like, it's just a good deal, a good.
There's no Elden Ring Battle Pass?
No.
It better never be.
Well, and with them too is they have a good track record, so they already have a built-in fan base that's like, they've had basically built-in word of mouth for like their past like 5 games.
Well, I don't ever see a publisher coming up to FromSoft and saying, "Hey, you have to do this way." I mean, FromSoft is going to go to hell. That's just the way it works. It's because they do have that kind of a reputation. That's just like, that's how it should be. It shouldn't always. I mean, the money's nice. Don't get me wrong. Somebody offered me $1 million. Yeah, I'd probably take it, but it's not always all about money. You got to think of long term.
Okay. Sorry to cut you off. I want to thank you again for joining us. I'm going to have to wrap up. So, sorry I had to step away. I was helping my wife bring in stuff. We're trying to set up for my 2-year-old's birthday. And I had a bunch of stuff I had to bring in.
Hey guys, Sperdunky here again, interrupting from the future. This is the part I was referencing at the beginning of the video, or podcast, however you're listening to this. So I had to cut out some stuff at this part, but I'm going to go ahead and let Fred introduce his Kickstarter and sort of his plan and thought process behind what he's trying to raise the money for.
I think the pledge is up, or the goal is around 10,000, and that'll put us all the way to the end of the year. That'll take care of all of because we're going to 2 different conventions this year, so it'll take care of the conventions, and it'll also take care of the rest of because I need to get a pro seat for Unity, because they just, with this last update, they just released it, and you can't distribute to Xbox anymore. So if I want to distribute to Xbox and Switch, I have to have a pro seat. So
Good to know. I didn't know about that change.
Yeah, they just changed it. It was not even a month ago they changed it. So I mean, the good thing is if you have a Pro seat, you know, you can still use your Xbox One as a dev kit, which is awesome. But you still can't. Yeah, there's no way to distribute to any other platform except for PC. So, at least for now.
It's good to know. I'll be keeping an eye on it. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Sperdunky and Friends Indie Game Dev Live Show is a product of Sperdunky Media. Subscribe for more indie game dev related content. Like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much.